Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome back to the Skybox sessions, your daily dose of macro analysis in Counter-Strike Global Offensive at the professional level. And today is, I suppose, a Valentine's episode. So happy Valentine's to all of those you, single or not. I guess if you're single, I guess it's kind of rubbing it in a little bit, but never mind. We'll get into the nerdy stuff. So I've picked a few rounds out here to just briefly go over, and I want to take a similar approach as I did in the previous video, where I kind of skip some of the more technical details of the build-up of rounds, and instead I want to discuss and show you guys what happens, or discuss the decision making and show what happens when you get to that kind of mid-round phase, which is typically the pivot out of a default where you decide to commit onto a site as the T side, or you create maybe an interesting mid-round situation whereby you've got a pick or you've lost a player, similar for the CTs, and now we want to assess positionally and timing wise, what are the best options for either team from that point forward. So without further delay, let's get into the first one. And here we're going to see, obviously it's a train. This is, yesterday I did the other map between Navi and Complexity. And here we're going to see a fairly standard, there's a bunch of openings that can be considered standard here. And this one actually isn't super standard in the sense that we're not really seeing a default. We will see this smoke here. Oops, gotta get my my free hand tool available to me. So we actually do see this smoke here, which is going to effectively just create the doubt that maybe a player could have passed or be playing somewhat aggressively in these positions. So it does give the CT something to worry about, which does buy you some time as the T side. And buying time is really important. It's all about creating a situation where the other team can't really know what's going on, and you basically striking in that window whereby you have then a timing advantage, because when they don't know what's happening, they can't therefore have a rotation to the correct positions. So therefore you have a timing attack or timing advantage in that moment. So interestingly here, that's kind of what this smoke is there to do. It's to just apply a little bit of pressure, deny a little bit of information, increase a little bit of doubt towards the CTs. They have to respect it, and they're going to maintain their setup outside. And we're actually going to see they're going to try to burst through this smoke and try to pressure the B bomb site, of which now at the moment there's only one player. This is a very standard kind of timing right now in terms of the B side defense. We can see that Rush is playing like a very standard defensive position, whereby the options he's taking here are to play passively and to delay the opponents. If he was playing a more forward position up on top of the train down here, or maybe around these positions, these are committed positions. If the Ts decide to attack the bomb site, there's no realistic chance for the CT defender in those positions to actually fall back or buy time. You're in a fragging position, and that typically the fragging positions only really work in terms of a planned defense when you have a support player, some other player to play off of in these positions to create a distraction for you, or to increase your chances with a flashbang or something similar, or something of that nature. So in this instance, as I mentioned, we have Rush playing it so defensively, and he wants to try to prevent the Ts from quickly getting position past these channels if he possibly can. In a B rush, when the Ts are able to shut this choke point down and get past it into deeper positions, that's when it starts becoming impossible to retake the bomb site. So that's a pretty huge objective, but we'll let it play out from here, moving forwards. And you can see that the rotation does come through. The pressure is felt by the CTs and the rotation is happening, but Na'Vi are not committing at this point. They, of course, they do have this flank coming up the ladder where Config's able to get a kill. So now they have to worry about this flank. So they have to send Boomish back up there. They have paused the round. They respect the smoke. More nades come through to increase pressure. This is the position Rush was just in. This is a great molly to know if you're ever attacking this bomb site. For this specifically, the reason that I mentioned, it will help you to try to be able to push the side alley or sidewalk position, or some people call this pop dog actually in North America, if that's what you're trying to do. You want to quickly gain position if that's a committed side take. So this molly really represents that committed side take, as well as the high smoke and the connector smoke. So right now it's high alert on the B bomb side, especially given that Config gave up his position pretty much immediately. I'm interested to... It's interesting that he did do that. It's obviously he's taking the safe option to maintain the numbers advantage, but instead, Na'Vi, instead of committing, they actually do go back to the other site. Now, there's a couple things about train that's interesting in terms of rotations. Look how close the bomb sites are to each other. It's one of the maps where the CT rotations are very, very close. And this means that obviously, you can always be in a position where you don't need too much time to really get to one side or the other, and that's really nice. And so we'll actually see here the CT's occupying a safe option where they've moved players away from some of the more forward positions towards Ivy, towards Hell, towards Olofmeister or Green Train. Any of these positions, E-Box, the forward positions as well, they've completely removed players from those positions, and instead they have this heavy rotation position that's possible. They're still not giving up this side of the map, and we're going to see that Config is also going to get himself up on this position. We're going to go into why that will be the case in a moment. Obviously, this is kind of rough in a sense because really you only have this. You only have just literally the bomb train to defend. And if the Ts do throw a smoke into this position now, what happens is they effectively trap all the CTs that once rotated towards B. So this is actually a common way to handle around like this. And you might see, I believe Na'Vi are going to do exactly that. We should see a smoke in this position. And will we get a counterplay from Config at all? So there is a molly there to prevent anyone popping out of ladder room, and that is going to allow him to quickly make the jump across. Now this is a really key play from Config because we're going to see, as I mentioned, the smoke is going to come in to block off this choke point. So right now, although they're still like in a good position to defend the B bomb site, they're now rotating. Blame, they've kind of worked out, oh crap, it's actually going to be A. But Blame is not really in a great position. He's obviously looking out for any Ivy pushes. And this is something that they kind of had to do because they pushed everyone through to this position towards this B bomb site because the threat was so huge there that now we're in a position where when Config and Obe came out, Config's worrying about ladder, he's worrying about T main from this position. And you have Obo, who was playing around the bomb train, who was worrying about any T's coming through Ivy who could have lurked out of Ivy, because in a play like this where they go heavy pressure towards B, it's not too uncommon that there'll be an Ivy lurker that could have actually pushed this position. So they're respecting that fact and having Blame have watched the stairs. So they have everything covered, but again, it's very, very passive because again, they had to worry about B first. So Config actually gets the pick because he's elevated in this position. Even though the smoke comes through a little bit late, it pops a little bit late before they start peeking, he likely would have got the kill anyway. So Config is able to then drop forwards. Pretty huge to be able to make that kill. And let's get a better look here at the smokes so you can have a better understanding of how the vision is obscured for the CTs and the positions of the CTs. So you can see that Electronic will take a high position himself to try to move towards the bomb train. But at this point, with 13 seconds left, it's very unlikely that the Ts will really be able to do anything. They've simply wasted too much time in this instance. And I would say that, also what we saw from the complexity was a pretty, they understand the protocols here. Once you've been, hit with that big pressure on the B bomb site, you got to be able to understand how do you best deal with the switcheroo effectively, the fast rotate towards the A site, where the Ts try to rotate you all into B, and then they want to lock you into B by smoking off this position. They open up this position. They open up the forward spots on the yard because you have to give up everything. As the CTs, you tend to only have this amount of control now. So the Ts, then want to take all of this. Squiggly lines, lovely. Okay, so that's that round. I think that's a cool concept to kind of talk you guys through. I think as far as train is concerned, this is a pretty common thing that you might see. Moving into the next round. Just reminding myself quickly of how this one looks. Okay, so let's just go through this one. This is a bit more typical opening where we have more of a default. We don't have two players going down Ivy or anything like that. It's more of a lurk from Boomage here. And there's lots of pressure. You can actually see it's all 5 smokes active for the Ts at once, which is kind of insane. If you're the CTs, at this point, it would be madness for the Ts to really try to attack the other bomb site because they would have to have everybody in position around these spots to actually be able to throw these smokes in the first place. So it's very likely they want to use the smokes fully and capitalize on the madness. So they do get one player out and towards the Olofmeister position. However, the unfortunate thing for them is they don't have ladder room just yet, which is going to create some problems. CTs are playing counter with smokes themselves. And this creates a really big issue because now all the smokes are just burned for the T side. They didn't get any map control out of it except one person towards Olaf, who's very weak. They didn't get any forward positioning on Ivy, which really sucks as well. And they don't have ladder room. So they just burned 5 smokes and got almost nothing from it. That's the only potential explanation for that is to basically commit the CTs into investing all of their utility in return, being convinced that with 5 smokes down from the Ts, that it would be a committed play behind those smokes. But that wasn't the case, and there is there's a utility remaining. Config gets a smoke, it's an incendiary, a couple of flashbangs, and they have AWPs, and that's going to be a huge problem. So now finally we get the push coming through, and Boomish is going to actually try to lurk through this smoke. And at this point, this entire round comes onto Boomish. And the reason is because it's the splitting the defense idea. Now, whenever you're going to attack a bomb site, to do so successfully, you need to split the defense. Because when you look at an ideal way that the CTs will try to defend, what they're going to do is they will set up crossfires. They will find ways to play off of each other, to be able to create bait setups, to effectively 2v1 you, or to create situations where you have to peek into a committed position where you can suddenly be shot from multiple positions. So instead, what you want to do is flip the script in that sense and actually split up their players. And so, for example, when we have, let's say, something like a split, let's say when, players are coming in from all these different positions all at once, that effectively splits up the defense, because then each position has to worry about their respective location, as opposed to, let's say the attack's only coming through T main. Then all of a sudden, everyone on the CTs is all looking at the same spot. Obviously, you don't want that, right? So at this point, when we're looking at a concept such as that, and we're looking at a round like this, the only thing that can save Na'Vi after burning all those smokes is Boomish, basically. It's the only thing that can possibly save them, because he's the only person that's really, effectively splitting the defense up, and he's going to walk through this position. He actually does find a timing here as well, which is kind of funny that he finds the timing here. He doesn't actually get this kill. He whiffs these shots onto Robo, which kind of sucks. But then he panic jumps across the corner, and Poison is absolutely not ready for that, which is kind of funny, because it's one of those situations where you're not expecting anyone to ever peek you like that. And Boomish wasn't trying to peek an AWPer here either. He's like, oh shit, I got to get out of the way because I'm going to get shot in the back because there's 2 bloody players in these positions. So he's going to actually take down Poison, who frantically misses the shot. Now, all of a sudden, now we can see this concept coming into play. All right, so we've got 2 Ts in this position trying to move forwards. And right now the player on Hell is distracted, and Obo is having to look forwards. Now, if Config has any trouble whatsoever against Boomish, now the round is suddenly in a lot of peril, and he loses the fight. This is really, really bad. Boomish gets Poison, he gets Config, and at the same time, Perfecto's killed Blame around E-Box. So huge problems now for Obo, because now Obo obviously has to worry about 2 positions at once. So now the round is effectively won in terms of an overwhelming advantage for the T side. But, one, you could argue that like Boomish should never have been able to do so much damage here, but he did. And that was the one winning criteria in this round, was Boomish to have an overperformance, or for there to be an underperformance in the players against Boomish. So, okay, let's move into the next one. I think this one's the next one I was going to select. Okay. And it's kind of cool to go over these rounds like this and kind of highlight the main concepts as they appear. So again, let's look at the opening. We get a lot of CT Molotovs here to prevent fast play from the T side. We get a much heavier commitment towards the IV side this round from the Na'Vi team. Now, quick pick from Poison. It happens as you make your way across these positions. Sometimes there are ways to make it safe, but we get the smokes around Ivy here. So right now, there's definitely a huge representation of Ivy aggression, Ivy pressure from the T side. And given that there's forward positions for the CTs, there's not really all that much that the T side can really effectively do from this position. Again, one of the main things is that these guys actually have to have impact, because as they're already down to 3 players, and by the way, this is one of the worst maps to be in a 3v5 from a T-side perspective, and the reason is because of the fast rotations, and because of one of the things we highlighted previously, that if the CDs want to play passively and give you spots, they can easily delay time and basically have full rotations of their players, from one side to the other. They just have to hold on to, they just have to protect the rotation positions. If they can effectively do that and buy time, then it's so impossibly difficult as the T side. Also because the CTs can have very favorable positions if they have close control of the forward parts of the yard and potentially Ivy and these kinds of positions as well. Then you're in a lot of trouble if they have this setup because they can with 5 players, they get fast warning to anyone coming Ivy. So there's plenty of time to fall back and delay. See, this is a really difficult spot to engage as a T side without a flashbang. The CTs can position in a way whereby they can protect this, create pressure, and then if you don't flashbang it, probably kill you. If you do flashbang it, they can fall back and then they can delay and get their teammates in position. Similarly with the ladder in position, similarly with these positions. So it's very hard to have the element of surprise when there's 5 players left on the CT side of this map. Not all maps are like this. This is one of the worst maps in terms of this for the T side. So I felt like it was worth highlighting this because when you're watching Counter-Strike at the top level, you will see these situations where the T side is in a 3v5. And honestly, it's very, very, very hard to find openings on this map against the CT side. And so if you see it happen, it's pretty remarkable. So we'll see if that's going to be the case or not here for Na'Vi. As I mentioned, it's really on these players to make something happen. If they can control this position, then interestingly, they can actually kind of sync up with the guy ladder and he can try to make a play. And it's harder for the CTs to deal with, but Obo pushes through the smoke. Now, we're going to look at this really quickly because this is actually very cool the way that they do this. So, props to complexity. So when you see this and you know that there's a pretty committed Ivy take, they already saw like at least a couple players there, obviously picking off one. We see a pop flash coming through from Poison. So they know they have a very good idea that there's definitely going to be a play behind this smoke. And what you're not expecting as a T side is a pop flash. And boom. So even it bursts behind Obo, full blind for these 2 players, full blind. Obo moves forward as it gets both kills. Round is over effectively. You can see that Flamey will try to save here, but he will end up getting a kill and dying. Right. So another interesting round in from a couple of points of view. Let's go to the next CT buy round. I think this was maybe one of the last ones I wanted to look at. I wanted to make it a quicker video today. Right, okay, so pretty standard opening insofar as the CTs throw down some counter utility at the beginning of the round to get forward positions. And the T's, however, have held on to their utility at the beginning of the round. This is another interesting concept. It's the kind of seesaw idea, or perhaps not the right word considering that term is used to describe rotations, but it's the idea of give and take when it comes to creating pacing and expectation. If you condition your opponent to think that you're going to play aggressively and there are positions that they must control, such as these positions, you can create a spot, or Banana Inferno is a good one to demonstrate this. You can basically create a spot where you can create a utility advantage. You may lose early round positioning, but if you're able to encourage them to even slightly overinvest, that can actually end up being a value exchange that ends up working for you on certain maps against certain teams. And so now we have this situation whereby the Ts have not used really any utility at all at the beginning of the round, yet the CTs have burned a lot of utility. Now, the utility that the CTs burn is going to be making their lives more difficult for retakes. And we're going to see that even more is going to start to be utilized. We see more smokes here. So 2 smokes remaining now. So smoke on config, smoke on Poison. And Poison is, where Poison at? Poison actually is playing B, and config is playing, they actually have moved around their positions quite a bit. Okay, config's playing forward at the A yard. So they've got a smoker site basically effectively at this point. Might make life a little bit difficult. We actually see the rotation coming in from Na'Vi towards the B bomb site. Now this is pretty interesting because if they have a utility advantage moving into this site, they're actually going to have a much easier time. If they try to attack this bomb site, there's more ways the CTs can have position because again, let's remember, they didn't play aggressively towards these positions. The CTs used their investment of utility to take forward positions here. So if Na'Vi wanted to attack into this, if they wanted to make it a longer round, they would have to retake these forward positions before setting up because otherwise there's too much warning for the CTs. They have too many ways to get kills without utility. It's a bit tricky. So I mean, you can do it, and there are definitely ways you can do that are effective. But in this instance, Na'Vi decide to keep it simple, and they decide to use their utility advantage to take the B bomb site, which is going to be very difficult for the CTs to deal with. We get the quick pop flashes, and what's cool here is that even though they have all this utility remaining still, they actually go for a contact play. They decide to contact it. So because there's a contact, there's absolutely zero warning. So the problem is as well here is that poison goes down straight away. I want to see how that happens exactly, precisely. Um, so given that poison actually has an AWP, so flashbangs come through, flashes come through. Okay, look at this. Poison's position specifically has been flashed. You can see this indicator. This means he's going to be flashed for 3 more seconds. And then Flamey peeks, gets the headshot. Beautiful stuff. And we can check out Rush's position. Absolutely blind. Extremely blind. And because his support goes down towards the high position, now he has no way to survive, because this player, as he moves forwards, gets all these points of attack from the high ground as these players push from the low ground. So there's absolutely 0 places for him to stand. And also, as we can see, to really sell this, they actually smoked the outside bomb site, which just, again, as I mentioned before, it creates these timing windows. So let's try to see the timings of this. You can see boom, boom, smokes come out. And then they quickly go for the contact play into the B bomb site. Now, had they thrown a smoke into B, then this would have been quite obvious. So that's one of the reasons why they go for the pop flashes there. And this is a beautifully executed round for Na'Vi. And as we have made it now through a good few rounds, and I think covered a good few concepts, yeah, I think this will do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Tried to kind of compress the concepts a little bit more, make it a little bit easier to maybe understand. We'll see. Let me know in the comments if you prefer this. At this point, I've done videos that are over an hour, that are an hour, that are half an hour, less than that. So again, keep hitting me up with your feedback to see which kinds of formats are most digestible for you and also most accessible in terms of how I deliver the knowledge and insight that I'm delivering. All right. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.